Hello and welcome to Rethink Life and our new episode. The episode that we are going to talk about today is, let's see, do you think your point of view is the truth? What we have a question that came in or a comment that we want to address from our YouTube. And so essentially what we're going to be exploring is human beings consider everything from within our own framework for reality. If I'm the world I walk through, then why wouldn't everyone see things the same way? So in this episode, we are going to explore Mrs. Eddy's statement, all is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And the question right in front of us today is, from the comment is, the idea that nobody else sees things the way we see them doesn't make sense. So we're going to be exploring that sentence and probably bringing in a few others from that comment, because it's really important to get the clear about metaphysical science and what's really being said here. Okay. Hi, Betty. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great.
My comment right at the beginning is Margaret Laird reminded us often that we live and move and have being mentally, and always have. When you perceive or believe that you live and move and have being physically, the way it looks when you look around, and that there are a whole lot of people, a whole lot of things going on external to your consciousness, then you're living as a two-legged animal. You're not living as a metaphysician. You're not living as science is discussing. You believe that other people see things the way you do. And that's not possible. Even physically, that's not possible. Everyone is unique. Everyone is individual. And nobody sees anything the way you see it. They may call it an apple. They may describe it similarly to the way you would describe it, but there are differences. And your perception is not ever duplicated anywhere else in the universe.
Right. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of what Jennifer does. So Jennifer goes in and does product concept drawings for teams that are doing new product line extensions at packaged goods companies. Okay.
She's an artist.
Right. She does drawings. So she's the wrist. And so they all go in to do this brainstorming to come up with new product line extensions or new variations of products or whatever. And so she's drawing while they're all talking in the room. And when they think they're all agreeing, like, yeah, that's it. She puts what she's been drawing, she puts it up, and they put it up on the screen. And half the room is like, exactly, guy, you pulled that right out of my head. That's perfect. And the other half of the room is going, yeah, that's not what I was thinking. And it seems to me that the same thing happens. And then they work together and they do all this stuff to kind of get to convergence. But that's exactly it. So the statement, the idea that nobody else sees things the way we see them doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense because it's an infinite variety and diversity of experience that is the world you walk through. That's the nature of infinity, isn't it?
Yep. No duplication, no repetition, always changing faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
So an ever-changing, always new, always fresh, always different, has to venture into departments not even looked at up to now.
Right. So that's what we're going to be looking at. We want to dive more into that. So the title of this episode is, do you think your point of view is the truth? And of course, for the most part, we live and move and walk through the world as if our point of view of the world is the way the world is. It's not like, well, this is my point of view, but it's like, no, this is the way the world is. And yet that's only my point of view from where I'm looking.
Yeah, it seems to me like I remember way back when we were looking at the S training, one of the things they said was human beings live the world as they are, not as it is.
Right.
And that fits exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. So before we get going too much more, what I want to say is, if you like this conversation, go ahead and give us a thumbs up or a heart. If you have any comments, go ahead and put those in the comments. Going forward, we'll bring them into the conversation. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up and hit that notification button so that you get notified of future live streams. All right. So let's just dive in here. Is there anything else you want to say before we fully dive in?
Nope, go for it.
All right, here we go. And again, you guys participate. Okay. So in Christian Science Re-Explored, Margaret Laird wrote, "What eternally is the reason for what is not."
Mm-hmm.
So let's unpack that a little bit. Give me an example.
I don't know that I have one at the moment. What eternally is, for instance, would be all is infinite mind.
Mm-hmm.
So what is not is anything that I don't experience as mind manifest. Like, I don't know, I don't pick up my pen here on the desk and think that's mental perception. It's really a pen, made out of plastic and ink and pieces and,
Right.
Right. So it's hard for me to see the mental nature of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see it a lot of the time, but I'm playing with the science that says everything is mental. All is infinite mind. And when they use the word mind, Mrs. Eddy had that be a synonym for the God idea. So we're not talking about brain action. We're talking about an intelligence that's universally present, functioning. And the functioning of that presence constitutes all that exists and all that seems to exist. So somewhere in there, there's this thing, like every need is met. If I want to write, I could do it with my finger. It's a lot easier for me with a pen.
Right.
Or a stick if I'm in the wet sand, or you name it. But I'm trying to kind of get to the point where I see that the being that I am is present functioning as Betty.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't Betty and being. Without being, there wouldn't be any Betty.
So there's this being, there's being showing up as Betty, as Kim.
Being always has evidence, identity.
Yeah.
A way to know that it's present.
Right. So so for me, if I'm understanding this correctly, so for me, being is showing up and Kim happens to be the playing piece on the board.
Yep.
And that tells me being is present. And I look at Betty, and I don't know if you exist or not, but in my being Kim, there is my Betty.
Yeah, you have a whole world of your own perception.
Exactly. And in my world that I walk through with Betty right there, my Betty right there, you may or may not agree with or have the same point of view that I have. And when you read Christian Science Re-Explored, and I read Christian Science Re-Explored, what I understand out of it and what I get and what you get could be completely different. I have no idea.
Well, and it would be very individual.
Right. Because every time I read it, I get something else.
Yep. And the same sentence, maybe.
Exactly.
Yep. Yep. I can see, but then you've got some background in science, in this
Right.
metaphysical science.
That's
So
right.
if you don't, and you come from believing that the two-legged animal that shows up calling itself Betty is all there is, then you've got a whole different world to deal with.
Right. I've got a
It's
mom out
you.
there. I've got a mom out there that I may or may not agree with that might be doing her thing. And I can be like, okay, now what do we need to do to adjust and change that rather than just let my world be, let it alone and allow it to show up.
Yeah, when I understand that all of my living that looks like it's out there is really my capacity to understand myself looks that way. But it's one thing going on. It's being whole. And this is what wholeness looks like to me. And that will change every instant in the look of Betty,
Right.
because it's all already established in the realm of being.
Mm-hmm.
And the identifying of it is in the language I can understand as Betty.
Right. So if I'm living my life now, I can just go back to this morning where I can tell you things that showed up definitely did not fit my idea of perfection functioning. But that would be Kim's idea. What showed up is exactly perfect for what there is, and could only show up that way for what there is for me to discover.
Yep. And the thing we discover is that the stuff we do isn't what makes us whole.
Yeah.
But the wholeness that we live makes our world.
Yeah. Okay. The wholeness that we live makes our world.
Yeah.
I like that. And that gets to the whole thing talking about living metaphysical science every day, living it rather than learning it, understanding it, and talking about it.
Yeah, and just these funny little things click through as I talk with you. And I think, so if I live my world from the point of view that the glass is half full, I'm going to have a different world than I am if I see that, oh, there's a glass of water.
Right.
Without the judgment.
Right.
It is a whole different opening for living. Just play with that a while.
Right. Now, let's see. We do have a comment from John Nada who said, resolve things into thoughts.
Well, science resolves things into thought. So if you're conscious of what Mrs. Eddy was talking about, you can go right along with that statement, because thoughts are things. And our belief system says, no, the things are out there. They're all separate from me. But science says there's one thing going on. All is infinite mind. So if things are thoughts, then mind is king of the hill.
Right. So there's nothing to do to resolve things into thoughts. So if we sit here and we're looking at things and we think, oh, I've got to resolve, that's just a thought. Now I'm playing around in the two-legged world. Is that an accurate?
I don't know. How's it working for you?
No, I'm just saying, I'm looking at it like, because it struck me both ways, like resolve things into thoughts. You don't have to do anything. They are.
Well, it's not the doingness that is effective. It's the being.
Right.
And there are a lot of things I could blather off, but what shows up is what I'm really being.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So then moving into science and health, there's a typo there. Science and health. Mary Baker Eddy said, the divine mind, which forms the bud and the blossom, will care for the human body even as it clothes the lily.
Yep.
Okay, what?
Divine mind. You know, that's universal intelligence.
Yep.
Forms the bud and the blossom. Yep.
And will care for the human body even as it clothes the lily.
And the reason that appears to care for the human body in those words is that divinity, how can I put that? Requiring identification for itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a self-understanding, a self-discovering. And in that self-discovering, the language shows up in understandable form. So it looks like the human picture shapes up, okay. Whether it's a body or a job or you name it. The capacity to do something, you'll find you can. You find that there's a positive correlation between your understanding of what's going on and your experience of it in the language you understand.
Yeah.
That's the reason why if I pay attention to what this science has been teaching me all my life, my human living goes along very well.
Right.
I find answers and solutions to whatever comes up. I find satisfaction in whatever's going on. I find health when I think I could be sick. You know, I just find answers, solutions. And I remember learning really and working with Margaret Laird. She says the problem doesn't occur to upset you. The problem occurs because you're present to a solution and not recognizing it. So it requires that you come up with that solution so you can walk on.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely necessary for your self-discovering and brought forth from being.
Yep.
In the only way that you can see it, the only way that like for me, the only way that I can see the one reality present, my point of view. Yep. When there's no more need for that point of view, the point of view will shift.
Yep.
But it's infinity going on. And then I have my point of view of it.
Yeah, the nature of being includes infinite as a descriptive.
Yeah. Okay. So then what you say about this is the God idea that sources everything, cares for everything. This action constitutes man seen and experienced as daily human existence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you, not just from a book. That's just your statement on it.
Yep.
Anything more you want to say about that?
No, I think that's okay.
Okay, very good. And again, if you have any questions, comments, put those in the comments so we can see those. All right. And for more discussion on this, Shakespeare described this fact as the divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew them though we will. And that's from Hamlet. And that's exactly what's going on all the time. So
there is never a moment when divine perfection is not present in your human living.
Right.
Not even 1 second.
Exactly. So the question, how are we all reading the same books and gaining higher levels of understanding from them?
You know, it's almost like looking at anything. You know, when you were 2, you saw it one way. When you were 10, you saw it another way. When you're a graduate student doing calculus and advanced physics, you see it another way.
Yeah.
When you're a metaphysician, you see it another way. But all of that is possible all the time to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So we shouldn't ever limit our capacity to be.
Right. It's always, the way that I understand it is there's one reality present, and this is my view of it right now.
It's always that.
Yeah.
It's always that. What's showing up in your human living is your language of reality present.
Yeah.
And nobody sees it the way you do.
Right. It's because it's infinite.
Well, infinite individuality.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So in Christian Science Re-Explored on page 35, Margaret Laird wrote, "Since the human is human because it's divine, my divinity makes all the decisions for my humanity."
Yeah.
So even though I think I'm making those decisions, I'm not.
Well, the decisions are made because intelligence is the functioning, calling itself Betty.
Right.
Or Kim or John or whatever.
Right. Does this play into the same thinking around there's a problem, there's no problem without the solution? So you're fussing with the problem, and but the solution's right there at hand, you just can't see it yet?
According to Margaret, the solution is what's demanding the problem. The solution is a fact waiting to be recognized.
Got it. Okay.
Not that it's really waiting, but it's always present. And when you need the answer and you're not working with the answer, the problem's going to come up saying, hey, take a look at this.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. The scientist, therefore, is unafraid, even when what he calls himself and his world is threatened with destruction. He realizes that such appearance is simply not seeing clearly, and that in reality, a new world of peace and plenty is forever in the making. And that's right from Christian Science Re-Explored, page 35, starting on line 18.
That's Margaret Laird's writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And in miscellaneous writings, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, "Science understood translates matter into mind. It is religion's new tongue with signs following."
Yep.
Say more about that. It's religion's new tongue with signs following.
Yeah. It shows up concretely in your everyday living.
Okay.
Shows up in a way you can understand it.
Yep. Okay, got it.
We call it language.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about language, I was listening to Margaret's seminar. I'm trying to think which one it was. It was probably, I think it might have been a London 1965 seminar or something. But she talks about, she's talking with somebody, and she's pointing out to them something about the bowl of lilies on the table.
Yeah.
And the man that was there said, well, that's just a concept. She says, it's not a concept at all. Oh, no, it's a bowl of lilies. A bowl of lilies is a bowl of lilies, you know, and he was really, but it's just a concept. It doesn't exist. She said, absolutely, it exists. And so listening to her and playing with that, and I thought, I can remember when I would have called it a concept too, but now I understand that a concept is not some object sitting out there on a table. The concept is my point of view. The thing on the table is reality, the only way I can see it.
Yeah.
But it's real, perfect, whole, complete, fulfilled, satisfied, all of that. And I'm just seeing it as an object. It does not exist that way.
Got it. Yeah, very cool.
But the concept is my point of view that says, oh, it's over there. Instead of, you see, feel, hear, taste, and touch right here where you are, not over there. it's the being that you are that shows up in something looking like that, because that's the best way you can see it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell you, if you don't begin to see the mental nature of the world you walk through, looking like it's two-legged animals even, you will have no dominion in your living. You'll always be a victim of the picture.
Right. Right. And then I would say red pill, blue pill, for those of you who have watched The Matrix. So for more discussion on this, Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy said, spiritual sense is a conscious, constant capacity to understand God. Its ideas are expressed only in new tongues, interpreted by the translation of the spiritual original into the language which human thought can comprehend.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Glad you think so. Glad you think so. All right. Now, in Christian Science Re-Explored, Margaret Laird says, since the human is human because it's divine, my divinity makes all the decisions for my humanity. Oh, I already had that. That's back here.
Yeah, you got to go on down. The next is a quote from my book.
Oh, got it. Oh, yeah. I went backwards. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So that's it. And yes, that's it. Okay. Sorry. I went the other way. I went the wrong way. All right. Christian Science Re-Explored, Mary Baker Eddy has that statement. Betty Albee says it this way, and it's small, but it says, mistaking one's point of view for reality provides untrue assumptions as your belief basis of living. Unaware of this fallacy of perception, confusion immobilizes your capacity to confront appearances, your language world, with the discernment of spiritual facts.
Yep.
So say more about what you just said there. Just break it down.
Well, if I mistake something that I'm looking at on the language, in human living, if I mistake that for supplying good for me or for helping me or for doing something one way or the other or not doing something, if I have the language responsible for achieving something,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a victim, because that isn't true. What I see, feel, hear, taste, touch identifies that I consciously exist, but it doesn't tell me what that looks like or how that feels or anything about it.
Right.
All I know is that I consciously am, because I consciously am.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Right.
If I can look at it accurately, what I'm looking at is there's just infinite mind present, the God idea functioning. Mrs. Eddy said the God idea functioning reflected is man.
Mm-hmm.
Man's the action of the God idea. So when I get that going on, then I begin to realize that what shows up in my everyday living, looking like a job or a bouquet of flowers or a friend coming for lunch or washing the dishes or anything else I do, what looks that way is the action most nearly identifying peace and joy and power in my human living. Does that help?
Yeah. And Sandy Jackson wrote, what I am perceiving is the necessary now experiencing.
Is the necessary now experiencing, yes. Good for you, Sandy.
Okay. All right. Let's see.
It's called the, I'm thinking of Mrs. Eddy's words for that, the necessary human footsteps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, in the belief that the seen, heard, and felt is what's so, love's presence may occur as discomfort and chaos. Even so, the oneness of perfection is the fact present, hence the discomfort in believing the lie.
Yep.
If belief is in the seen, heard, and felt.
Yep.
So if you're believing what you're seeing, then you may have discomfort and chaos.
Yep.
Don't be surprised.
I'd be surprised if you didn't.
Why me? Okay.
Why me, oh Lord?
That's right. Okay. And in Christian Science Explored again, Margaret Laird on page 35, quoting Bicknell Young, says, mind is our individual and collective selfhood. When thought takes on the divine character, it inevitably manifests the divine nature. There is nothing contrary to allness.
Right. All is infinite mind, nothing contrary. It's all mental.
Right.
All is perfection functioning.
Yep.
It's all perfect.
Yes. And what made Mrs. Eddy's vision unique was her recognition of the indivisibility of consciousness and her identification of mind as the all-pervading substance or energy which constitutes existence.
Yeah.
And again, go ahead. No. Yep, that's Margaret Laird and CSR.
Yeah.
Now in Science and Health, on page 340, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, one infinite God, good, unifies men and nations, constitutes the brotherhood of man, ends wars, fulfills the scripture, love thy neighbor as thyself, and leaves nothing that can sin, suffer, or be punished or destroyed.
Yep. Yep.
So and that's the same way of saying, when thought takes on the divine character, it inevitably manifests the divine nature. There's nothing contrary to allness.
Right. Yep.
And in Mind as the Athlete, on page 89, you said this: metaphysical science teaches that there is no authority outside of one's own divine being. Consciousness is all there is. The language world of apparent external forms is the current view manifesting reality.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have a view if there wasn't a reality present.
Right.
Just as there wouldn't be a Betty if there wasn't divine being present.
Right.
And it's present now, fully informed. You know, it's like available to you when your perception allows it as your own understanding.
Yeah.
It's not a tool. It's much more than that. It's constitutional. It isn't like I decided to have a hand today. I've got a hand whether I decide or not.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just like I have the answer whether I know it or not. Yeah. And so figuring out how to put Betty aside long enough to be present to the answer is what it looks like in my daily living. I just have to let go of the Betty stuff. You know, Betty has a lot of favorite things and a lot of things she doesn't like and all that stuff. Yeah. And when I let go of that, it's amazing how present I am to what's actually going on.
Right.
And then the whole thing dissolves, whatever the challenge was. It just takes care of itself. An answer shows up, or supply occurs, or a job shows up, or a friend comes over, or whatever is needed. Mm-hmm. It occurs.
Yeah.
And it's not by happenstance.
Right.
It's because I grow the world as I am. As I'm being, so be's my world.
Yeah.
You know, in Margaret's words, we are the world we walk through. All of it. When I think that you or anybody else in my daily living is thinking the same way I am, that's like, how's that working for you, Betty? because there's no way that anybody even knows what I'm thinking.
Right.
And the fact that I look at it and say, isn't that lovely? Right next to me can be somebody saying, I wish they'd get rid of that thing.
Right. Right.
You
Well,
know,
that also reminds me of the art that Jen's drawing right now. And then she'll show it to you and you'll see stuff, and she'll show it to me and I'll see completely other things.
Right.
We're looking at the same thing.
Yep.
Right. Totally
Right.
different.
Yep.
Yeah. So then finally what we have is to think about is the facts exist, but the concept of those facts has no existence aside from that given by the one living that concept, by the one that has that point of view.
Yeah, facts are always present. The spiritual fact. You know, Mrs. Eddy gave a definition of science when she said, science with which can be discerned the spiritual fact of whatever the senses behold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good statement. That's
And
a good
that's
definition.
and that's our goal, really, in living science.
It's not so much a goal as it needs to be recognized.
Yeah. But the thing that I was saying is the ability to have the discipline to recognize that continuously.
Yeah, and you will recognize it when you need to.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say, I'm going to pour this in tonight.
Right.
Ah, now I have that understanding.
Right.
Doesn't
It's
go
moment
that
by
way.
moment by moment by moment.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And the thing is that we would live in a world of total agreement if everybody saw exactly the same thing all the time. And
Yeah.
boredom.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right.
Wouldn't need to talk to you because I'd already know what you're saying and thinking.
That's right. All right. So that's all we have today. And there's no comments that are waiting to be looked at. So I want to thank all of you for hanging out. We went a little bit longer this time. We went a little bit longer. But at any rate, let's see. Nope. We did go a little bit longer. But if you enjoyed this, go ahead and give us a heart or a thumbs up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And all of that. And thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. And until then, live science.